Hello everyone and welcome back. It's Tuesday and you know what that means. It's time for another Sweet Ramblings. I'm Angela from Cake Angel. I'm thrilled to have you here today, whether you're watching live with us or if you're watching the replay. Let me know in the comments if you're watching the replay. Just a little bit about Sweet Ramblings. This is a series that I started recently as an opportunity just to chat to some fellow bakers and find out a little bit more about the person behind the cookies and their creations and find out about their journey as well. So just as everyone starts to get logged in, I'm just going to do some quick checks on my end. And then today we're going to have Amber from the Sweet Cookie Sheet joining us. So I'm really excited to find out about Amber. I don't know too much about her yet. So let me just see if I can add her. There she is. She's logged in. So I'm going to go ahead and bring her into the call. I'm crossing my fingers that you can hear us.
Hi.
Hi.
I turned my Wi-Fi off and turned it back on, so hopefully it'll work now. I don't know.
Perfect. Yeah. And sometimes that's what happens, right? It just, technology sometimes doesn't want to be a friend. So fingers crossed. Well, good to see you finally.
Wow.
So do you want to go ahead and just introduce yourself and give us some background information about how you got started with cookies?
Yeah. So hi guys, I'm Amber. I randomly got started with cookies. I am not a baker at all. I've never been a baker in my whole life. I actually learned how to bake by deciding that I wanted to decorate cookies. And the way I got into it is that way back when, before I got married, my career was in the entertainment industry. So I worked in television. I lived in Los Angeles and I worked on television. And I worked these crazy hours, like 14 to 16-hour days. And it was great because I worked with all these creatives. So I had this huge creative outlet. And then I got married and had a baby and moved out of Los Angeles. And then I was a stay-at-home mom and I literally had nothing to, well, not that you have nothing to do because you're taking care of an infant, which is a lot. Yeah. But I didn't have that creative outlet. And I would sit around and breastfeed my baby like a lot of moms do, and it's like all day every day, and I just be on my phone, and all of a sudden on my Facebook all these cookie videos started popping up and I was enamored, and then I started watching them and searching for them, and I realized that there was this amazing community of people who were teaching themselves how to do this or teaching other people how to do it, and I thought I can do that. So that's kind of how it started, and I didn't have a creative outlet at all. You know, I went from these crazy days, long days with, you know, all these really artistic people to not having that. So that kind of filled that void that I had in my life.
That's amazing. I think a lot of us as women and as mums end up somehow getting into baking once we have kids. I used to bake before I had kids, but my cookie journey has definitely been spurred on by my kids, with them wanting specific things made for them too. Do you find that it's given you that sort of me time for you to shut off from mum life as such?
I wish, but no, it's done the opposite. I mean, it is me time, but it's more stressful, right? Because now I have a toddler who's very active. We like to say he's really good at being 3. He's a pro at it. And he might be watching right now, actually. I saw my husband jump on. But he, so it's like I spend all day trying to chase after him, and I try to, you know, bake here and there while he's like running around and playing. It's just added more stress because I can't really decorate till after he goes to bed. So I start at 8 p.m. every night, and then I'm decorating and I'm tired and I've chased him around all day. And so no, I don't think it has done that. Actually, it's done the opposite. It's more stress in my life.
I think a few of the other bakers that I've talked to have said the same thing. They've become nighttime decorators now, because it really is the only time that they can, without having kids kind of pulling at your leg that they want something. And it's, once you start to ice a cookie, you need to ice the cookie. You can't just stop mid-flood.
Right.
So
and I do
yeah,
some like detail work when he's awake or whatever, but then he'll come in my office and he'll grab my icing bag and then he's eating an icing bag, or, he's pulling all my ribbon out of the bin and then my office is a mess. So it's difficult. And I also find that like when I'm trying to do cookies when he is awake during his awake hours, then I feel like I'm not giving him the time that he needs, and I'm not giving the cookies the time they need. So it's like it's a whole thing. It's not, as fun as people might think it is when you're trying to balance life with doing this, because it's not necessarily the easiest creative outlet to choose.
No, it's not, is it? Yeah. And I think that's another thing we're kind of demystifying in these talks, is that you don't just bake a cookie and then poof, it's done. It's right. There's so many stages. There's time for drying, and if you sell, then there's packaging and all the back and forth with customers. Do you sell to customers as well?
I do, but I'm pretty part-time because, I'm a stay-at-home mom. So I do sell, but I try to take, no more than like 6 dozen a week. And then there's some weeks where I'll just do 1 dozen, and I'm totally fine with that. You have all these cookiers too who are like, 2 dozen minimum. That's not me. If you want to order 6 cookies, I will do it for you, because that's really easy for me to fit into my week, and it'll give me a little bit of money. But I like actually doing the small orders that I can really focus on the detail with. And I notice when I take these really large orders, you just don't get to do the same amount of detailing and work. It just doesn't work because you have to put so much time into making them.
That's right. And I think a trend I've seen is a lot of the larger orders tend to be a lot of repetition too. Yes. So then it's not as creative necessarily. It's more about just kind of churning the cookies out, which takes a little bit of the creative side away from it then too.
And that's the one that I'm drawn to, right? I'm not someone who wants to just be in the kitchen all day baking, and I hate mixing icing. It takes forever. People don't realize, and it's so tedious, and I don't like it. And I'm not a cook either. Like, my husband does almost all the cooking in our house, so I don't have that like real I love the kitchen, I love to cook, I love to make meals for my family. That's like not really who I am at all. I don't think I've ever even made a cake in my life. I mean, I've made a cake for Cake Pops, but I've never like made a cake and decorated it. That's just not my thing.
Yeah, but that's smart that you know what your limitations are, especially with orders too, because then you're less likely to get that burnout that a lot of cookiers talk about, because they feel they can't say no to people. So that's really smart. You've worked that out.
That's something I really struggled with in the beginning too when I started, and I don't know if a lot of other cookiers or bakers experience that. I think it's pretty common though. Once you start something and you have friends and family, and then, you build this clientele, it's so hard to tell people no, because you're like, oh, then I'm not going to get their business again. Or, I want to do this project because this is someone I'm close to, but it's really difficult. And people don't realize you can't just like add an order in last minute either, because it's so much work. But I really learned quickly that I had to say no, because I burned myself out very, very quickly early on.
And it's important, right? Because then if you're burnt out, you won't create as good of a product that you would normally. Yeah, that's so true. Yeah. So where did your business name come from? It's really cute. I love it.
Thank you. If my husband is still on here, he'll like this. He actually chose it. So okay. Credit him for that. The way this all came about is I mentioned earlier, I was watching these videos and I thought, oh, with my background, I thought I can do this. I have a really steady hand. I think I can teach myself how to decorate the cookies. So I told my husband one day, I think I'm going to learn to bake and decorate cookies and maybe try to create a business. And he literally started laughing at me. And because like I said, I don't bake and I don't cook. I try to not spend any time in the kitchen if possible. And then I was like, that's not nice. I can do it. And I showed him a photo, and he's like, oh, I for sure think you can do that. You should try it. So after that conversation, we came up with a name immediately. So I had a name, you know, a web domain. My mom got me orders before I even decorated my first cookie, based on me actually saying, I think I'm going to try this and see how it works. And and it was kind of crazy because he was like, well, let's just come up with a name and, you know, get your Instagram started. And all of that happened before I even decorated a cookie. So I had no idea if I was going to be good at it. You know, my mom got me orders, people paying when I hadn't even decorated a cookie, and which is really great. I have so many people in my life who support me, but I had to tell them to back down a little bit because I didn't even know if I could do it.
Yeah. But that's, I mean, hats off to you for jumping right in though, because I think that's a struggle that a lot of people feel, oh, I should wait until I reach a certain level. But I think you learn better when you have to do it.
Right.
You know, rather than take your time, because we're always still learning even after years of doing this. So
right. Well, and I probably,
That's
to be honest, if I didn't have that pressure, I probably would have just tried it once and been like, I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to do this. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
You know, but I was forced into it a little bit. So
that's good though. It's worked out for you. So I took a look at your Instagram, and you've got such a really nice range of different types of skills that you have. Where do you tend to get your inspiration from?
So, you know, I get my inspiration from doing research. I'm like a big research person, and I think that comes from being in the entertainment industry. I did so much research, and I liked that. Like, you know, you get a theme, and then I put all this energy into figuring out what's a cool creative way that I can try to put this theme onto a cookie that I haven't seen before. And it was really similar in TV, because, you know, you'd get a script and it's like, okay, how can we make this set look really great that is not like every other set that we see on every other show? So we did a lot of research, and that's kind of what I do. I'll get a theme, and then I'll, you know, deep dive the internet and Pinterest and look for artists and try to come up with different type of designs that will work within the theme rather than what you tend to normally see. And I love to reach out to artists and ask them, hey, I saw this piece that you created and I'm obsessed with it. Can I put it on a cookie? And I've never been told no, but I love doing that. And it also introduces me to such a huge variety of art and people who are artists and who creators, and I love that. That's my favorite thing. But that's what I do. I get a theme and I deep dive into the research, and I think that's how I come up with everything.
So in terms of your orders then, do you prefer it when the customer will just give you a loose theme and let you run with it?
And I find if I have a customer who wants something very specific, the cookies never look as good. So I try not to even take those orders anymore. And I get it. Like, you're paying a lot of money for cookies. Cookies aren't the type of cookies we do aren't cheap. So if you want something, you deserve to get that. I just might not be the person to do it for you, because if I don't have that vision, if you're asking me to create something very specific, it's just never going to turn out as good as it would if I could choose what I'm doing. You know, there's so much art that kind of goes into it. And if you're not feeling inspired, it's just not gonna turn out as well. Especially I think there are other cookiers who are really good at it. I am not at all. It's not.
And I think when you get that creative freedom, being the person that's creating it, then it gives you that opportunity to, you'll know more what will work for that theme. Whereas the customer, if they bring you a picture and they say, can you recreate this? Well, then it's like you say, it's really hard to put your own spin on it, and you want it to be something that you're proud of too. So yeah, that's really interesting. We've had different opinions on that when I've asked other cookiers of, do they prefer, you know, that really hard theme and ideas off a customer, or the free reign. And I think I'm more like you. I would prefer free reign to just put my own spin on something. So.
Right.
That's great.
Yeah. And also I find that I'll have an idea for a cookie, and then when I sit down to decorate it, it might not work exactly how I thought it would in my head. And I like to have the freedom to change it so that I can do the best design for my client. So I also don't like to even commit to designs for my client, because you know, 90% of the time what I have in my head will work, but not 100%. And then if I'm stuck trying to make this design work, they're not going to get as good of a set. So I like to be able to have that freedom. And I do change a lot while I'm actually decorating. And I'll have like half the cookie done and I'll all of a sudden have light bulb and I'll be like, oh, I want to do this. This will add so much to it. So
how long roughly would you estimate that you spend on a set in terms of time from the research side of things?
Much more than I should probably. I can't estimate it, but I will research for a couple hours. Like I'll lay in bed and I'll do it while I'm watching TV before I go to bed or in the morning. You know, I'll just be on Pinterest all day, you know, deep diving Google. So I always spend probably at least a couple hours on it. But I do it kind of during my downtime.
Yeah. That's true. And how do you design your sets too? Do you use anything like Procreate or do you sketch them out?
I don't. I need to do that. But I kind of work really organically. So like I said, it's not as easy for me to pre-plan. I'll have a lot of ideas as far as pre-planning goes, but I won't pre-plan every detail because it's just not what works for me in the way I do it. However, if I do end up expanding my business and taking a lot of orders, I think I will have to do that because I also waste a lot of time thinking, okay, what do I want to do here exactly? What do I want to add? And if I were to pre-plan, then you don't have those questions. It's much more streamlined and easier to do. So
yeah, that's true. We have a comment or a kind of question here from Noonie Bakery that says they see you have a good amount of cookies with edible markers. They use rainbow dust pens, and even after dusting with cornstarch, they still sometimes get bleeding. Do you have any issues with that at all when you use edible markers?
Okay, yeah, I saw that question. I love using edible markers. I love it. I love the effect that it gives on cookies. I like that you can get so much dimension by you know, by having something really flat on the cookie and then adding icing. But I do not have that issue. I do use the rainbow dust and I use the Tweets pins. I've even bought some at Hobby Lobby that I've used. I think Kate Craft is the brand, either at Hobby Lobby or Michael's or something. I've used all of those and I've never had an issue with bleeding, but I do cornstarch everything. And so what I'd recommend is cornstarch it and let it put a lot. I do a lot of cornstarch. I go through an insane amount of cornstarch. So I'll put it on my cookie and let it sit there for about 15 minutes before I dust it off. So I don't know how long you're leaving the cornstarch on or if you just dust it. I never just dust it. I sit it there, I leave it, and then I go back and dust it off. And I do a lot. Like you can't really even see the lettering underneath it. That's how much I use.
That's a good suggestion.
Yeah, and I've never had an issue with bleeding. And then I pack, and I do it before I package. I do know a couple cookiers who will actually draw on the cookie and then they'll cornstarch it right away and then they'll go back and do other detailing around it. I've never done it that way, but I think they have luck doing it that way as well. So you might want to try that as soon as you are complete with your marker, go back.
And I think as well, always bear in mind humidity. If it's particularly humid where you are going to unfortunately be more likely to get that kind of thing happen. So it could just be that maybe they're being bagged up a little too soon. So that's another suggestion. Leave it sit for a little bit longer,
you want to make sure the pen is completely dry. Though, you know, with those pens, they do dry pretty immediate. But yeah, that's really a good thought. I live in a really dry, it's really dry where I live, so I don't have the humidity issues, luckily. I couldn't even tell you how to deal with that. It'd be nice.
So where I live in Ontario in Canada, we have both sides of the coin. So our summers are really humid, so it's very humid here right now, and then our winters are much drier because we have the cold snow. And I have to adjust what I do depending on the seasons. And I run a dehumidifier when it's very humid just to take that extra moisture. Do you ever use a dehydrator at all?
I do. And that's an interesting thing to bring up when you're talking about the climate that you live in. So I I didn't use one for a long time, and I finally got one for Christmas. I asked for one for Christmas and I got it. And from what I've experienced, and I've only had it a few months, I don't think I can use it in the winter, because I tried it in the winter and even putting the cookies in for 10 minutes, it completely changed the texture of my cookies. It hardened them, even to taste them. It was just a different texture completely. Well, now I've tried it recently in the last couple months, and it doesn't change the texture at all. So I really think what is happening, you know, with the climate does play into that. And I would have never imagined that the winter versus the summer here would have been a huge issue for my dehydrator, but it is. So I try to not use it at all, though, because it is so dry here. It does affect my cookies for sure. And I'm nervous. So I had to redo a whole set because I did a set and I tried it the next day, and I just thought, I can't in good conscience give these to my client. I don't like the way they taste. It just completely changed the texture. So I've been very nervous since then to use it on client cookies. I do, but I always make sure I have extra to make sure it hasn't messed the cookie.
Yeah. Are you ready to do some quick fire questions?
Oh, sure.
A couple of them we've already answered, actually, but okay, let's do a few. So in terms of color schemes, do you prefer bright or pastel?
Okay, well, this is a funny question. I've seen you ask this to other people. I prefer kind of neutral pastels, but I think I have one set that is those colors, because I tend to always decorate in bright colors. I don't know if it's because it's the orders or that I get, or that I just tend to do it. I gravitate toward them, even though I don't really like them. I don't know.
It's funny, isn't it? I'm kind of the same. I don't do orders as such. I tend to make things just for content, but I always seem to go for bright, but I'm a pastel girl. I always have been. But because I have boys too, everything they like is bright. So
well, look at my background. It's like all monochromatic. I can say that word. And yeah, all my cookies are like bright red and bright blue. And also, that's probably why I hate mixing icing, because those colors are a nightmare to mix.
Yeah, that's true. In terms of piping bags, tip or tipless?
Tipless. Unless I'm doing florals, stuff like that. So I always do tipless, but I always use tips. I prefer tips for florals and leaves and stuff like that.
Me too. My background was always to use tips. So I think for certain precision work, I'll always use tips. And like you say, for florals, it's hard to replicate a lot of that detail that you can get with a tip. But tipless bags are phenomenal too. I'm so glad that they're available and they're much cheaper to buy.
Right. Well, I will say, actually, when I first started, you know, a lot of cookiers do tipless, and so I tried it and I could not do it. It just never worked. So I think for a good 6 months, I always used a tip. Even if it was like for outlining a cookie, I'd use like a 00 or a 0 tip. I have so many of those because I could not pipe without a tip. And now it's difficult for me to pipe with the tip. So I just made the switch somehow, and it worked. So if you're having trouble with that, just keep practicing. And I actually way prefer tipless now, but I would have never thought I would in the very beginning.
Yeah, that's a good thought, actually, because I think sometimes when people start, if you go straight to tipless, you're almost trying to learn two things at once, whereas the tip, it takes that precision for your lines away. So yeah, I mean, always practice. It's one of those things that comes with time. Next one, projector or freehand?
Oh, projector, 100%. It was one of the first things I bought, and 100% projector.
Everyone, I'm kind of thinking I need to get one. I don't have one because I don't do enough work that requires one, but I completely see the value in them, that just for certain characters and things, it really seems to help.
Yeah.
Would you say that's your most used tool that you have?
Yeah, it is. And I use it on every set. There are a couple things I use on every set. My projector is definitely one of them. I use edible pens probably on every set. I just love to use them. you know, those are definitely go-tos for me.
Mm-hmm. And then in terms of sort of style of cookies, do you prefer to do characters like faces or flowers? If you had to choose, which would you choose?
I think I would choose florals between the two.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a hard one. I don't really want to do either.
it is.
But
It is a hard one.
yeah.
And I've had some people that are very definite, it's definitely not florals.
Yeah. I'm not.
They can be a little intimidating.
Well, I'm still intimidated by florals, to be honest. But yeah, I don't know. I like doing characters though, because I like finding fun new ways to do the characters. So I don't know how to answer that one.
Yeah, they're very different, but I always like to ask because it gets a good conversation going.
Yeah.
And then when you are baking, do you have a favorite flavor that you like to eat for yourself, or do you just bake for orders and that's kind of it?
This is another interesting thing about me. I'm not a big sweets person. So, I mean, I could go, you know, a year without eating a cookie or a piece of cake and it wouldn't bother me, but I can barely go a day without eating a French fry or a chip, you know? So I'm more of a salty person. So when it comes to baking, I like anything that's a little bit more salted, like that has salt in it. So I actually put extra salt in all my cookies. And I love the taste of them, but I like, I do the cinnamon roll that I think is the crumbs cookie recipe, and I could probably eat those all day. That recipe is amazing for anybody who doesn't have it. I highly recommend. So yeah, I do like the real cinnamon cookies for sure.
We talked about the edible markers that you use. Would you say Rainbow Dust is the brand that you reach for the most, or do you use the sweet ones as well?
Because I like to use a real fine tip. So those are the two that have the best tip that I've used so far. So I know there are a couple other brands out there, and I probably will eventually try them all, but the Tweets tip is amazing. But I also press really, really hard when I use the pens. So I go through the tips like crazy. So I've probably gone through like 50 pens just in the last year.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. Crazy.
And they're so versatile these days because they come in so many more colors. I remember the days when all you could get was a pack of 5 or 6, and they would be the really thick ones as well. So they've definitely come a long way in the last few years. Yeah. So for anyone that is starting out with edible markers, what sort of tips would you give them?
Oh, well, you have to be, I say that I press really hard, and I do, but you have to be careful with that, because even if your icing is really dry, it'll poke a hole in them. And give yourself time to really kind of practice with it. But, you know, one of the reasons I like doing the edible markers is because it is a pretty easy technique, and it's also really beautiful, you know, and it's fun to mix those with, you know, your more layered icing, so you get a lot of dimension on your cookies. But I also just love a cookie that is just, you know, flooded white with black edible marker on it. It's one of my favorite looks. I just love a black and white cookie. They're so clean. But, you know, they're really easy to use. So I'm not sure I really have any tips for using them. The cornstarch is a big one.
Yes, yeah, that is a good one actually. Yeah.
That's a
Do you ever paint with them as well, with the edible markers?
Yeah. Actually, I have a cookie here. I'll show you.
Okay.
So this one I actually outlined in the edible marker, and then I went through and painted on top of it. And I did add a little gel food coloring to it as well, but it's fun to paint with them, to put it on. And then I tend to use Everclear. I do use vodka sometimes because it'll give you a little bit of a different look. But yeah, I do. This is an example of painting with an edible marker.
That's amazing. You can see this dimension there straight away.
Yeah. Because you can kind of see the line underneath it, and then it's a really fun technique.
And I think it's a really nice look as well, away from all that buildup of icing, which a lot of people don't like that much icing on their cookies. So this is a great workaround for that technique.
Absolutely, yeah.
So what's next for you? What plans do you have for the next little while
I,
with
yeah,
cookies?
you know, I have to be honest. I have no idea. Since I've started the business, so I've been cooking for a little over 2 years, and I have gone through multiple stages of where I thought I wanted my business to go, and I got to a point where I was just completely overwhelmed with all of that stuff and how to do it. So I think I'm just kind of taking it one step at a time, and we'll see. You know, it's hard for me to expand too much because I have a child and I can't put the time into it, but he is starting preschool this year, which will be fun for him. And so maybe I'll be able to expand a little bit, but I don't know. I have no idea. I can't answer that question really. We'll see. We'll see.
Do you have anything like themes on your wish list that you're looking forward to doing?
I don't, but you know, my favorite holiday is Halloween. So since Halloween is coming up, I'm excited about that. I love doing Halloween cookies. It's my absolute favorite. And I'm excited because this year CookieCon I'm going to Dallas and it's in October. So I get to do Halloween for the Sugar Show. So I'm excited about that. Really excited about
That's
that.
amazing.
Yeah.
Is it your first CookieCon as well?
It's my second CookieCon. So I went last year just before COVID hit. Yeah. So I'm really, really excited. I think the most fun I've had at being a cookier is doing pieces for the Sugar Show. That's been like my highlight because it's really fun to think outside of the box and come up with really fun ideas.
Yeah. CookieCon sounds, I've never been able to attend it yet, unfortunately, but it sounds amazing. Yeah. And I think a lot of people are really looking forward to it this year because they have the 2 as well. So it's given a lot more people the chance to go. Any tips for anyone that's going of what they should try and make sure they do?
Yeah, so it is, first of all, I highly recommend anybody going at least once if you can. It's very expensive. It's a very expensive trip. So, you know, be prepared for that. Maybe save up if you want to try it once. It's also really overwhelming. So I think what I recommend is just going and trying to just take it all in and not being too overwhelmed by it. But, you know, take an extra class. It's expensive, but do it because you're going to get so much out of it. Even if it's stuff you think you know, I always learn. Even if it's like even a new way to do a technique that you always do. And that can really, really help you in your skill set, I think. So, you know, go take classes, enter the Sugar Show, really try to like push yourself outside of the box. You know, and I've made great friends, like one of my best cookie friends. It's so funny to say cookie friends because we are real friends. We're not just cookie friends. But you know, that's how we really like met and bonded because we both decided, let's do it. Let's go together. We'll room together. And it was such a fun experience to do with someone. And you get to meet so many great people. I am an introvert, so it's really, really difficult for me to meet people. Even doing this Insta Live is like, it's really overwhelming for me. I don't like to put myself out there because I just get in my head about it. So for me, it was good to have someone with me because I'm not good at talking to people, but, you know, it's a great way to push yourself out of all of those comfort zones. So that's why I like it, you know, because you're around all these people who do the same thing. So push yourself. There's so many different things that we all struggle with. And it's like you can find something at CookieCon to help push yourself in, you know, out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I've heard that a lot of people realize when they're in a room with other cookiers is that everyone goes through the same struggles. Everyone is their worst critic with their own work. And it's just good to talk to people, even the more known cookiers, that they've all gone through this. So it's nice to just put it all into perspective, I think. Yeah. And, you know, when I started these lives last month, it was... it's easier now. It wasn't at the time. Right. So one of those things, the more you push yourself out of your comfort zone, the more natural it becomes. And then next thing you know, you're fine talking to anyone.
Right.
So.
And you know what? It's so nice being put in contact with people who do the same thing as you or have the same interests and go through what you go through. Like you said, I've really enjoyed this series that you're doing because I've watched them all, and this is people that I don't know, and I'm like, oh yes, I went through that. And then you feel like you have a connection with somebody, you know, and that's really fun, and it's inspiring. And it's great. The cookie community is really great. It's really amazing to have people that do the same thing as you, and they are so welcoming. And I wouldn't be able to do it if it weren't for the cookie community, because I learned so much from everybody, even just on Instagram, or people that I can reach out to and ask questions to. You know,
it's true. Yeah. It is a very, very supportive community. Yeah. I find I don't think I've come across anyone yet that has said, no, I'm not willing to help you, right. Because we all remember that same journey, yeah. and that same nervousness to put themselves out there.
And if you think about it, there's not a lot of other, especially artistic communities, that I think are so welcoming and so willing to share. And this is art, right? We create art. Mm-hmm. So it's so much more than baking, and it's amazing to have people that will just tell you how to do something better or correctly. And I love that, and I've learned so much by being able to ask yeah. those questions to people I don't even know, and they're so willing to tell me.
Yeah, it's true. So, well, I hope this hasn't been too nerve-wracking of an experience for you.
I kind of ramble, so sorry.
Oh, it's good. It's good. I like coming on and being able to talk to new people every week as well, because especially at the moment where we don't get that contact with people in our industry like we normally would with going to shows and things. So it's great that so many people have been supportive of it. So any final thoughts from you before I wrap up?
I don't think so. If anybody has any questions about anything, I'm always willing to help and give answers, but I am not an expert by any means. I've only done this for, a couple years. So, but my door's always open.
That's great. And it's phenomenal how far you've come in such a short time too. Okay. You can see that there's real passion there. So I'm excited to see where your journey goes now over the next little while. Thank you so much for coming on today. I know we had technical issues, but we got there in the end. It's okay. It's all good. It's happened to me a few times, so it's all part of the fun of going live. So this will be saved. Yeah, this will be saved on my IGTV for anyone that hasn't caught all of the live today. I will tag Amber in my post as well, so you can go check out all of her work. And next week, I'm going to be joined by another cookier, Mindy from Mindy Paper, and we're going to chat about her experience. She started baking just this last year, so we'll see how her journey compares to yours as well. It'll be really interesting to see how that pans out. Awesome. So thanks again. Thank you to everyone that's joined us on the live as well. And that's it from me. Thanks very much again, Amber, and I will see everyone next week.
Bye, guys.
Bye.